Today, we're diving into a really powerful, maybe even radical idea. What if that feeling of being stuck is actually a kind of mental trap that we build for ourselves? We're going to get into this fascinating concept called the strange loop. So let's just start with this question. Really think about it. What if that feeling of being trapped by a memory or a pattern isn't about the thing that happened, but about the very way we've learned to see our own minds? This is a huge shift in perspective, and we're going to unpack it piece by piece. All right, so the material we're digging into today reframes trauma in a really interesting way. It's not just a bad memory. It's described as a stable arrangement, basically a state where the mind loses its natural flow, its flexibility, and gets locked into a really rigid structure. So what does that actually mean? Well, you know that sound a record makes when it's stuck in a groove, playing the same tiny fragment of a song over and over and over again? A stable arrangement is pretty much the mental version of that. It's a pattern that's so rigid, the mind just can't move past it. It is literally stuck on repeat. And this model uses the classical elements to break down that stuckness, which I think is pretty cool. Physically, trauma can become calcified in the body, right? Like heavy, dense earth. Emotionally, it feels like stagnant water, totally unable to flow. Mentally, our thoughts get stuck in this closed loop, like trapped air just circling around. And energetically, the fire of whatever happened, it just never quite cools down. It's just this trapped, anxious energy. Okay, so if trauma is a trap, what's holding it together? What's the actual mechanism? The source material we're looking at calls it the mind's sticky glue, and it has everything to do with how we see the world and how we see ourselves. We tend to split our ability to see things into two totally separate boxes. On one side, you've got your extroverted perception. That's you looking at the world out there. It feels objective, it feels real. And on the other side, there's your introverted imagination, all those private images inside your head. We draw this really hard line between the two. And this is where this sticky glue comes in. It just melts that boundary. In a state of trauma, the mind takes an internal image, a memory, a fear, whatever it is, and it gives it the exact same weight, the same undeniable reality as a chair or a table. The memory stops feeling like a memory and starts feeling like it is happening right here, right now. Exactly. This puts it perfectly. It's not some vague recollection. The mind literally sees the event, projecting it with the full force of reality. That internal image gets glued onto the external world. Okay, so if the problem is this frame that separates our inner and outer worlds, well, then the solution is to take it down. This is where we get to the core idea of unframing, this radical act of just dissolving that artificial line we've drawn. Now let's really sit with this for a second. What if this whole separation between in here and out there isn't actually hardwired into us? What if it's just a mental habit, a conceptual frame that we've been taught to use? And if it's just a frame, well, that means we can take it down. And hey, this doesn't just apply to sight. The same exact logic extends to all of our senses. An echo of a traumatic sound, a phantom smell, a memory of a touch, they all get stuck because we frame them as if they're real external events. By unframing them, we can start to see this single, unified sense faculty that's just creating all of these experiences. This is such a powerful way to put it. When that frame is in place, we're just the audience, right? We're helpless spectators watching this terrifying show that feels like it's totally independent of us. But when we unframe our senses, we realize, wait a minute, we're not the audience, we're the performer, we're the projector, we're the entire show. And that changes everything. All right, you with me? Because now we're going to take this one step further. If we can unframe our five senses, what about the most fundamental sense of all? What about thought itself? This is about dissolving the final and probably the most stubborn frame that we have. The big idea here is that the mind itself is just a sixth sense. And our thoughts, they're just its mental objects. And we frame them in the exact same way we frame sights and sounds. We divide them into my private thoughts and the world's narrative out there. But what if that division is also just an illusion? The payoff for this is this incredible feeling of freedom. When you unframe thought, a thought is no longer mine. It just is. All of a sudden, you don't have to own it or fix it. A story you hear isn't an attack from the outside. And most importantly, if there's no I or mine for the memory to belong to, well, that sticky glue has nothing left to stick to. The trauma completely loses its ink. So all of this brings us to the final, really mind-bending concept that ties it all together, this strange loop. It explains not just how we get trapped, but it also gives us the fundamental insight that sets us free. Okay, so let's follow the logic. On one hand, this seems super obvious, right? The mind is the container for all our images, our thoughts, our senses. Simple enough. But here's the twist. The very concept of the mind is itself just another image. It's another thought, another mental object that's created by the image faculty. You literally can't think of your mind without using your mind to create an image of it. And that, my friends, is the strange loop. It's a system where if you try to move up or down the levels of logic, you find yourself right back where you started. The sense faculty creates this idea called the mind, and then that very same mind turns around and tries to analyze and categorize the sense faculty that created it in the first place. It's a completely self-referential, self-creating system. And here it is. This is the profound payoff. Inside this loop, the self who is suffering and the problem that is causing the suffering, they're not two separate things fighting each other. They are both mental objects. They are both creations that are appearing at the exact same time within the exact same unified process. This brings us to the ultimate solution that's proposed here. Healing isn't about fighting or fixing or struggling. It's about a cessation of belief. It's about withdrawing the label of real from the problem and just recognizing it as another performance of the sense faculty. So we end right back where we began, but with a totally new depth, right? If the self and its problems are just creations of this continuous, unframed sensory performance, then the power isn't in escaping reality, it's in recognizing our role in creating it. So the final question isn't what's happening to you, but what reality are you, right now, choosing to perform?